Welcome to Wellness Wednesday. I'm here with my poppy, Dad, Dr. Richard Krebs, and he is making a second appearance. So he was my first interview when I started First Fridays many months ago now. So welcome back, Daddy.
Thank you.
I guess we can do a brief introduction of who you are and your background and why you're here.
Okay.
Do you want to do that or should I?
You do that.
Okay. This is my dad.
Yes.
I invited him tonight because I recently wrote a blog that he inspired about healthy aging. So September is Healthy Aging Month. And I have looked up to my dad for a long time as someone who lives a healthy lifestyle, but it wasn't until I did my functional medicine training that I was like, oh, he does a lot of things that we're all really supposed to do that I never did growing up. And now he is an excellent example for me. And I wanted to share some of the things that he does so that we can all learn from it. Dr. Krebs, or Pop, has a background in clinical psychology. He's been retired for quite a while. He is an author, a new author. He wrote a recent book called A Long Goodbye that might be published or might not. He talked about in that book the saying goodbye to my mom, his wife of how many years?
57.
57. So she is the inspiration for this group, Brain Wellness and Dementia Prevention. And so anyhow, he's an author, is a retired psychologist, has been a Lutheran pastor, also retired. And now he's kind of living his golden years and still doing well. And one of the things I mentioned in this blog is that even though he's 83, he was 82 at the time, but he was carded, or at least not believed that he was over 65, and they weren't sure he could get the senior discount at the Utz factory. So let's see what Pop has to say about healthy aging. So that the beginning of this blog, and I'll just kind of reiterate for us all here in case you have not read it, that there's some bad news that I'm going to get out of the way first. So the bad news is that the life expectancy in the United States has dropped from 78.8 years in 2019 to 77.3 years in 2020. So that is largely due to COVID-19, but it's important to note that we're not doing very well regardless of COVID compared to other countries throughout the world. So there are actually 45 other countries that have a longer life expectancy than the average American. There are lots of things that we can learn from studying other cultures and what they do, and the blue zones around the world where people, it's not unusual to live to be 100. And again, like I mentioned, during my functional medicine training, I learned about epigenetics and lifestyle, and how what the genes that we were born with only play a very small role, about 30%, to determine how we live, how long we live, how healthy we live. So what we do every day plays a much larger impact than the genes that we were born with. So I'm going to ask you about all your healthy habits. So I kind of picked out a top 10. I thought of an 11th. That's not really a habit, but something that definitely influenced you that we'll touch upon. But the first one is listen to your body. I mean, that's something that I preach with regularity when I'm teaching a yoga class, because you don't want to push too hard. You want to make sure you have just the right challenge, and you're not, it's not too easy either. And, you have been a really good example of listening to your body. So I'll just share my observation and then you can elaborate.
Okay.
And maybe share how you got to that place. I don't know. We've never had this conversation, so you're all hearing it for the first time too. But I would, if you said, I think I'm coming down with a cold, where many of us, I'm guilty of this as well, a mom running a house with young kids. I felt like I was coming down with a cold, but the laundry still had to be done and the kids still had to be nursed and dinner still had to be made, and I would push. Pop would start to feel like he's coming down with a cold and meditate more or eat less.
Sleep more.
You would go to bed super early just to kind of nip it in the bud before it got started. And you were almost never sick. I mean, I can barely remember a time that, you had more than a cold, and that was rare. So from your perspective, how did that evolve? How did you know what to do?
I'm not sure I know. I think it probably started when I was in psychotherapy. Part of my training as a clinical psychologist was to be in therapy myself. And I didn't just role play it, I really did it for a number of years. And I got used to trusting my own images and my own feelings. And I think that kind of bled over into caring for my body as well. But I think it really started as a psychological function rather than a biological one. But it wasn't that I decided at some point that I'm going to pay attention to my body. And then that was certainly nurtured by my years of meditating, where I would attend to my body as I sat and meditated. But it's not anything I really thought much about. I just did it.
Right.
Wasn't a decision or a commitment. It just seemed like the right thing to do.
Right. So I think that's going to be a recurring theme.
Okay.
Because most of the things on this list, again, as an outsider observing, it seems like they just sort of came naturally. So you can correct me if I'm wrong as we move forward. But so the first one was listen to your body. That's a good one. And the second one is eat dinner early and brush your teeth afterwards. So that kind of encompasses two things. So you would, as a family, especially during the years when you were working and would sometimes see patients in the evening, we would have dinner at 5:30 because you'd go back at 7, right? You'd have a couple of evening patients.
Right.
It was rare. Sometimes you would come back and have like a beer and some popcorn, but usually your dinner was the end of eating for the day. And what you didn't know, or what I didn't know until not that long ago, was it's really, really healthy to go to bed with an empty stomach. So to have 3 hours of digestion time before you go to sleep, you're gonna sleep more deeply. It's going to be easier to move into your parasympathetic nervous system, which allows your body to relax, and your heart rate goes down lower when your stomach is empty. It just sets you up for healing while you sleep, so that your body isn't digesting. It doesn't have to worry about digesting, so it can work and focus on healing. So you didn't know that.
No, you just did it.
But you did that. You ate early, and then usually, you would go brush your teeth after dinner.
Right.
I don't know if that was a conscious thing to keep you from eating later?
I figured I was done
You were
eating
done-
for the day.
Done
Yeah.
eating for the day.
Yeah.
So I've heard it now recently used as a strategy to prevent you from
Mhm.
snacking later.
Mhm.
But I think for you, it was just, I'm done eating
Right.
for the day, so I'm going to brush my teeth. But the second good thing that that does is really focus on good oral hygiene. So we now know that taking care of our mouth isn't just about having a pretty smile. It takes care of our heart and our brain. So when we have good bacteria and healthy gums, we're not worried about the bad bacteria going through our bloodstream directly to our heart and into our brain. So two good things.
And I don't like to go to the dentist. So.
No, you don't. But you don't really have cavities? You've never had a root canal, or have you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
you have?
I had a couple when I was younger.
Oh, okay. But I think that's a pretty good number 2. Eat dinner early, brush your teeth after.
Okay. Yeah.
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 Do you have any more feedback about that one? How that evolved? Was that also just happened?
I think it just happened. I didn't know it was a good thing to do.
Right. Right. So number 3 on the list is to fast. Again, lots of research over the last several years is showing the major benefits of intermittent fasting. So like compressing your eating time, so you just eat from, maybe 12 to 6, or make sure you don't eat from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and just do a 12-hour compressed eating. Some people can tolerate going for 24 or 48 or 36. And really it depends person to person what fasting kind of program or time frame is best for you. But you've been fasting for kind of spiritual
Yes.
reasons
Yes.
for a long time.
Yes.
So can you share that?
Yeah. For a period of time, I didn't have much of a spiritual life, but through a friend who started doing Zen meditation, I got interested in meditation. Initially learned to meditate through learned to meditate through the Beatles guru. He was considered kind of the McDonald's of gurus. Learned how to meditate, and then what came out of that was a real spiritual awakening that initially frightened me because I started to have experiences that I didn't understand. But then eventually got back to what had been my roots as a child. Grew up in the Lutheran Church, went back to seminary, looking for answers as to what in the world was going on with me. And then what happened was, over a series of years, each time I reached an important time when I had a decision to make or felt like there was something that I needed to look at more carefully, I'd take a gallon jug of water in my sleeping bag and go off in the woods for a few days and not eat and meditate most of the time. Now, as I've gotten older, I don't go off in the woods. The last time I felt the need to spend some time meditating, I went to a friend's house who has a home on the Maine coast, and he let me use his bedroom over top of his garage as a place to meditate for a couple of days. I've gotten softer, but the results are still the same. A time of prayer and fasting that always has resulted in clarity. The last time, the message that came to me not some voice, but an idea that came with power in my head as I was trying to wrestle with what do I do with my life now. Barbara, my wife, your mother had died. I wasn't sure what was next for me. And I was wrestling with trying to understand what I should do. The message that came was shut up and wait. So for the last couple of years, that's what I've been doing. Shut up and wait. So I haven't had to go off since then. But I suspect still, if there was a major crisis point in the sense of an important choice to be made, I would still do that. There is something about not eating as well as the meditating itself that just, for me at least, brings clarity. And that's certainly an old tradition in almost every religious persuasion. And to find out that it also happens to have biological healthy benefits was just kind of interesting. Again, didn't do it for that reason, but nice that it had that overflow.
Right. And you always responded physiologically okay to it. You didn't do anything to prepare to go in, or
no. One time I made a big mistake. I was over in Scotland.
I recall.
And I was wanted to spend some time in fasting and did so. Went to an old ancient retreat center as part of that time, and hadn't eaten for several days. And as I was coming back from there, I was hungry, and the only thing I could find was a terrible scone, I'm sure made with lard, and ended up sick. Just barely made it home without losing my bowels somewhere along the way. In fact, had to stop, just knocked on somebody's door and said, "Can I use your toilet?" Right. And they allowed me to do that.
That's Scotland for you.
Yes.
They just take in a stranger.
Right.
Hospitality.
Yes.
Yeah.
But normally when I break a fast, I eat something sensible. I remember one of my favorite times was I was out on the Pacific coast with a friend and had spent a couple days in fasting, and broke the fast by going outside to her garden where she had a lemon tree, and took a lemon off the tree and made that my first meal.
That's perfect.
It was. And if you get a ripe lemon, it's not sour.
Never had a lemon off the tree.
No, and that's the only time I've ever done it. It was wonderful, wonderful way to break the fast.
Cool. Thank you for sharing your kind of fasting background. And I think we're going to have some overlap here, because number 4 is meditation. So you've shared a little bit about it already. With the previous interview was about in part meditation, so we talked about it more there. Another just thing I mentioned in the blog, and I'll share it now because we didn't talk about this before, is that I've tried multiple different types of meditation, many different instructors, and have been told over and over to find a comfortable but not too comfortable position, like have your back really straight. And I've struggled with that for so long. I couldn't just sit on a yoga mat and keep my back straight and feel comfortable. But I heard recently that the culture that we live in, we're just not used to sitting straight.
Right.
And for us to meditate and get any benefit out of it, we really should be in a comfortable position.
Yes.
So, I mean, did you learn that, or were you taught that, or you just decided that's what you're going to do?
I just decided that. I sit in a chair, a reclining chair that's extra wide, so that I can sit with my legs crossed. I have short legs, and many chairs are not particularly comfortable for me. So I often sit with my legs crossed if the chair is big enough to accommodate that. And that's how I sit to meditate. I used to just sit on the floor with my back against a chair or a couch or whatever. But as I've gotten older, I need something softer to sit on.
Yeah.
But I think comfort, if you're not comfortable, then that just distracts you from
That's right.
what you're there for.
Right. I have found that I think I'm saying it right, a zafu and a zabuton are pretty comfortable for me. So, but I sit with my knees bent and one cushion holding my butt and the other cushion kind of protecting my knees. But I really like your recliner chair, just kind of, with cross-legged or knees being supported by the armrest. So that's, if you're struggling with meditation because you can't get comfortable, follow his advice, get comfortable first.
And then use the same place. That place becomes holy. I can meditate other places and do, but it's interesting to me that not only family members, but even the dog sometimes come and sit in that chair, because I think it does develop a holiness, a healthy place. So take advantage. Once you find a place where you feel comfortable, then go back to that place. And it needs to be a place that's quiet as well as comfortable. Mostly, preferably, a place where you're not going to be interrupted. But most of all, just comfortable and quiet. Yeah, I don't know what I'll do if that, or when that poor old chair finally gives out.
Have to break in another one.
I don't know if I can
Create another holy space. I don't know how you are. I guess you meditate often while everyone else is still asleep, because the house can be noisy and we interrupt him sometimes. But you've been meditating for decades.
Right.
And there was just a short gap where you didn't meditate for a while.
There were a couple of gaps where I just thought, nah, I've had enough of this. This isn't doing anything. Or I got mad at God or whatever. But pretty continuously for 55 years.
Yeah. Okay, so number 5 on the list is social connections. I mean, you maybe had more regular social connections than Mom.
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily typical, and usually the female has lots of friends and the male less so. That's a generalization and stereotype, but you've made an effort, as long as I can remember, to like really nourish good relationships.
Doesn't feel like an effort, but I'm committed to several friends. I'm a relatively shy person, so it's not like I have dozens of friends. But at any time in my life, I've always had 3 or 4, or maybe up to half a dozen good friends that I could just be myself with. I support them and they would support me. And most of them were people that I was in regular contact with, but several were people that I might only see once or twice a year, and yet we would just pick right up where we left off.
Right.
The friend in California with the lemon tree was one of those people. She was somebody that I went through training with at Chicago, and the two of us just remained friends, even though we rarely saw each other. I moved to the East Coast, she moved to the West Coast. sometimes more than a year would go by with minimal contact, but we could immediately pick up again where we left off. And I've always had at least one or two friends who were readily and frequently available. I don't think I could get by with all of my friends being people I only saw once or twice a year. And for me, one of the hardest parts, maybe the hardest part of getting older, is that good friends die. And so far, I've found, I'm going to say replacements in the sense that you can't really replace anybody, but that at least I have always managed up until now to have at least a couple of close friends who are still alive. And for me, it's important that those friendships be outside the family. You know, my children and grandchildren are extremely special to me, but I don't want to put the burden on them or on me of friendship being a part of that relationship. So yeah, friends are important. What's fascinating to me, for most of my life, I saw myself as a bit of a loner and somebody that really wasn't all that social. And finally realized, no, you're not an outgoing extrovert, but you've always had and you need a couple of good close friends.
Right. You were not the person that went down to the bar on a Friday night and had beers with a group of guys. That was not you. But you, the group of pastors you went sailing with every summer.
For 30 years.
Yeah. And with your brothers, you would go out to lunch monthly.
Right.
Yeah. And then your friends that live far away, you would meet them, you know, in Boston or Maine or California and
Georgia now.
Georgia, yeah. Take a trip and be together for meaningful extended periods. Right. Not just a beer on Friday night.
Right. And the other friend who has been very important to me, Bob Katz, a fellow psychologist who took over my practice when I retired. We get together every couple of weeks for lunch. He's not close by, but he lives in Laurel, so it's not that hard to get together. I do at times wonder, you know, what will happen when I can't drive anymore or shouldn't drive anymore. Fortunately, he's younger than me, and maybe he'll just come here.
Yeah. So we have gone through listen to your body, eat dinner early and brush your teeth afterwards, fast, meditate, and social connections. So the last 5, number 6 is a constant search for meaning. And most recently, that has kind of been the hammer dulcimer that led into this book that sort of opened things up. But you're always learning, always looking for meaning in life.
Yes. That has caused me consternation and pain, and has taken me in directions that I couldn't have predicted, and has caused, you know, problems for other people. I remember when I was in college and went through a period where I was an atheist and was doing my senior paper. I was a philosophy major on Friedrich Nietzsche, who was not only an atheist, but attacked Christianity. And I took a year off from college primarily because I needed time to work to make enough money to go back. But I also used that year to work on my senior paper and read everything I could get my hands on that he had written. And when I had the books around the house, my mother picked them up and scared the hell out of her. She was sure her poor son was going straight to hell. here's this man who talked about Christians in very derogatory terms. So I've caused problems not only for myself, but for others from time to time. But I have no regrets about doing that. I have gone where my search for meaning has led me. And some of those have been a surprising place. As you said, the most recent one being, I was playing, I just started taking hammered dulcimer lessons, and how that happened is another long story that we won't get into, but I just started learning to play the hammered dulcimer. And I was playing Pachelbel's Canon, and played that theme through once, played it through a second time, played it through a third time, and burst into tears. And Barbara had been dead at that point, well over 2 years. It's getting closer to 3. And I thought, what is this? And right after that, sat down and wrote a book over a weekend. So that there was a sense that there was still something that needed to come out. My grieving was not done. And so meaningful searches are not necessarily happy, but they are powerful and important. And never too late to start, and should never stop.
So going from heavy to light, so the next one is be active. And I have been interested in sports and going to the gym and aerobics and fitness, since I was very young. And you absolutely despise anything organized fitness. You played some sports when you were
High school and college.
But you didn't have anything to do with a gym or organized sports since I've known you.
Oh.
But you really like to be productive, and you like to add your physical activity into your productive feat for the day. So
Right.
Can you share some of the things that you do?
One of the things that I do is I go food shopping several times a week, carry my bag, so I don't have to use a plastic bag. And it's about almost a mile walk each way to the store. And I walk to the store, fill up my bag, and walk home. And not only am I getting the groceries that I need, I'm getting exercise. I'm not using my car for a short run, which is bad for the car and bad for the environment. So I accomplish multiple things with that one act. The other places that I walk to are the bank, the library. More recently, I've just been taking walks, which I don't enjoy as much.
What is the point? I'm
Right.
just wandering in circles. What am I accomplishing?
Right. I really prefer a walk that takes me somewhere to do something. The other thing that I have enjoyed for many, many years is working in a vegetable garden in the summer. My wife's grandfather, we called him Pappy, was a farmer. And soon after we returned to Baltimore, before Laura was born, he and I started a garden together. And he had been forced to retire by multiple heart attacks. So he was the consultant, and I did all the work, which was fine with me. And as the kids grew, they got involved in helping too. I think their favorite was harvesting potatoes in the fall, because I'd walk along with my little hand plow and these potatoes would just magically appear. And
corn was fun too.
Yeah.
When we found those little baby corn. It's
Yes.
exciting.
Yes. Yes. And so that's my preferred way to get exercise, accomplish something at the same time. Although, as I said, I have started to do just some walking because I have more time now than I did when I was working. And there aren't a lot of things that I can productively walk to. And I have to admit, I've also been using my daughter's weights.
I've got several over there. So my older brother's a physical therapist. And I'm an occupational therapist. So we've given you some exercises to help ease this pain or that pain. And
Right.
you're a very good patient. You've been keeping up with your exercises and your pain has disappeared and not come back.
Right.
And you're maintaining your strength.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't go crazy to the gym like doing bench presses, but you'll do 5-10 pounds.
Yeah. I think 8 pounds.
You're doing 8
I think
now.
8 is the one I use most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. So you mentioned the garden. That gives us a good segue into number 8, which is eat foods close to their natural state.
Yeah.
You've always had a garden. Well, for a long time,
For a
you've had a
long
garden.
Yes.
And we don't have space for a garden at our house. The backyard's all shaded.
Right.
The front yard's the front yard. I mean, we could do a victory garden out there, but we never did. It's not that big.
No.
It's not that
And there's a
big.
tree there
And
too.
there's trees and car exhaust and yeah, so you're not a fanatic about what you put into your body. I did tell on you today that you had a pizza for lunch.
Yes.
But for dinner you had things with no ingredient list: chicken, green beans from the garden.
That was it.
Did you have any of your sun-dried tomatoes?
There was one.
One from the garden.
Yeah.
So you enjoy foods in their natural state.
Right.
And that is the main bulk of what you eat.
Right.
But I'd like to also tie back into listen to your body. So over the last couple of years, you've been trying to figure out an itch. You have a scalp itch. Could I be allergic or intolerant to, or have a sensitivity to something that I'm eating?
Mhm.
And you've been really good at sort of, playing the investigator and
Right.
pull things out and put things back in. And
Yeah, I've just over the last 5 years, I guess, just gave up alcohol. I was never a big drinker, but I used to drink a beer, especially with Krebs. And while Barbara was still at home, she and I would literally share one glass together of wine with dinner. But I just reached the point where alcohol just didn't sound good, and I just stopped. And it was the same with caffeine. I just didn't suit me anymore.
right. And you've stopped gluten and dairy for periods of time.
And now it's limited.
Mhm.
I don't do either as much as I used to. I used to eat ice cream pretty regularly, and I still have it once in a while because I do still like it. Got that from my mother, who grew up as the daughter of a pharmacist, and she could walk down the steps because they lived over the pharmacy,
And there was ice cream
and there
there.
was ice cream there.
Yeah.
And her family, her mother's family, had an ice cream plant in Pennsylvania.
Oh, I forgot that.
They used to
Right.
go up for the summer and use the ice that they cut off the pond to
Huh.
make ice cream,
Wow.
and eat ice cream every day. And when my mother got older, well into her 90s, sometimes when she went out, her meal would be a dish of ice cream. And I don't think it's any coincidence that on our first date, what Barbara got for a snack was a dish of chocolate ice cream.
Right.
She was in.
Right. Mm. So number 9 on our list is go to bed early. And
That's just natural for me.
Mhm.
One of the things that I had to adjust to when Barbara and I married was that was not her natural style.
Right.
Her natural time to go to bed was 11, 12. My natural time to go to bed is 8:39.
Mhm.
And so we ended up going to bed around 10. But once she moved into Homewood, and since she's no longer here at all, I went to my natural time, which
Right.
is, I mean, it's rare that I'm not in bed by 9 o'clock.
Right.
And then I'm up at 5. Sometimes I pass my grandson
Going
as
to bed.
right, going to bed.
Yeah. Yes.
Um,
So maybe the grandkids will learn from you, but I don't know.
in their own
In
time.
their own time. Yes. So it's very healthy to kind of mimic the sun
Yeah,
and go to bed when the sun goes down and get up when the sun rises. And that's really been your natural existence.
yes.
So last on this list is, we've kind of touched on it already when we talked about searching for meaning, but it was challenging your brain. And you're not, I mean, you will sometimes do a Netflix binge, but
Mhm.
yeah, but you're also learning the hammer dulcimer
Right,
at 83 years old.
82,
Nuh-uh,
82,
you're 83.
82,
We're gonna have to,
1939.
we just celebrated your 82nd.
Yes,
Oh, I guess I have to make a correction.
I guess you do.
I've been lying.
Oh, Laura.
Okay.
Okay.
But you never stop learning. You're always, one of your walks is to the library, so you always get a book.
Or 2 or 3.
Or 2 or 3. And sometimes you have ideas that you want to investigate and research, and we'll go to the college library and
Right.
investigate those. We've taught you how to use a computer, and sometimes you just Google things.
Yes. Yes.
You learned a computer, you learned a cell phone, you resisted it, but
Yes.
always learning.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just goes back to your maintains your curiosity.
Yeah. One of my earliest memories, I was probably I was less than 3, somewhere between 2.5 and 3, because we had just moved into a new house. And I remember standing at the base of an areaway, which was about a block from my house, trying to decide whether or not I should go up there. And I was on my own. I just wandered away from the house. I've always been an explorer. The other early memories that I have are also exploring oriented, sitting on a horse when I was 2.5, or standing in an empty boxcar at about that same age. There's just a sense in which, as far back as I have any memory, I was looking for things. And one of the earliest pictures my parents have of me is of my standing in a carriage, a baby carriage, with some kind of a harness on. But instead of sitting in it, I'm standing looking around.
Right.
And that's kind of been my style, always looking. The hammered dulcimer has just been a joy. How I stumbled into that would be another whole session, but it's been perfect because it's an instrument that I fell in love with 50 years ago. first time I heard it, I thought I had stumbled into heaven. And then this woman moved in next door to my older son, who happens to teach the hammer dulcimer.
Right. Little coincidence there.
Yes, lots of those.
Yeah. So that search for curiosity, is that something you think your parents supported?
Definitely supported. But I think it was me. My two brothers, not as much so. It was just something about how I entered into life that included a search for meaning, for new things. I remember sitting by the hour, devouring our book of knowledge,
Your
encyclopedias, just reading them through,
Mhm.
just sucking up
Yeah.
information.
So we've gone through the top 10, which are kind of behaviors or habits. But there's something else that I thought of that I'd like to just talk about as well. It kind of is an underlying philosophy that was started by your pediatrician probably, and maybe your mom.
Well, she sought out the
She sought out the
pediatricians.
pediatrician. So if you can share a little bit about him and
this is back in the day when doctors still made house calls. Our family didn't have a car. The only way we could get to the doctor was by public transportation. We lived in Baltimore. And soon after we moved into our quote new house, when I was between 2.5 and 3, I fell going up the steps and hit my chin and had to get stitches. And he drove to the house, put me on the kitchen table and stitched up my chin. And I screamed the whole time. But what he mostly did, with the exception of stitching up my chin, was encourage us to let our bodies heal. He would never prescribe anything if we were sick for the first couple of days. Said, let's wait and see if your body takes care of that. And almost always it did. It was very, very rare that he ever prescribed anything. The only thing he prescribed was cod liver oil. And we were supposed to take a little tablet every day. And I liked it. So I'd bite into the gelatin capsule so I could taste it rather than just swallowing it. And I don't know how many years we took cod liver oil, but we've learned since that indeed that was a very good thing to be doing for our developing brains. But the rest of the time, bed rest and liquids, and that was it. Let your body heal. Your body can mostly heal itself. And we've also learned, to our regret, that the emphasis on antibiotics and interventions can really be debilitating. And so I'm sure that his approach to the body's healing had an impact on me. I thought seriously about going to medical school when I was young, and I'm sure it was in response to him, his kindness and his wisdom, and yes, he certainly reminds me as I think back on him. Your body will heal itself most of the time.
Right. Number one, listen to your body.
Yes.
If you're unfamiliar with cod liver oil, it's very high in omega-3 fatty acids. It's a good source of vitamin D, both really good for your brain, particularly a developing brain, but to prevent dementia. And it's critical to have good levels of vitamin D. Have it checked, but it should be between about 40 and 80. 60 and 80 would be better. And so, yeah, I mean, I was on antibiotics a lot as a kid, yeah, regretfully. And I'm sure that played a role in kind of messing with my gut and causing troubles that we didn't anticipate. But then I learned from my mistake. And so next generation now, you know, my kids went, I think MG's first antibiotics were when he got his wisdom teeth out. And they were like, really? They asked if he's allergic to anything. I'm like, I don't know. He's never been on one. What? He's 18. I know. He's never been on anything. Right. So listen to your body.
Yeah.
Your body will heal. And I think we mentioned it in the last interview when you talked about caregiver stress, how you ended up in the hospital, being the main caregiver for mom, and found two doctors, two cardiologists, one who said, let's do intervention. Let's go get a
pacemaker.
Yes, immediately, at least a catheterization and see what's going on. And the other doctor who said, you've never had this kind of episode before. He passed out in a restaurant. And maybe we could just put a heart monitor on and see. You're under a lot of stress. And wait, your heart rate is really low. Why is that? Oh, you meditate. You have the heart rate of an Olympic athlete. So the philosophy that you started with as a child helped you when you were in the hospital in your late 70s. Yeah. Listen to your body. Only intervene if you really have to, and you didn't. Well, the intervention we did was to give you more help, so you had less stress.
Yes.
Yeah. But we didn't have to intervene with a pacemaker. That was good.
Yes.
So that was a pretty good list, Pop. So the title of the blog was Add Life to Your Years and Years to Your Life. And I think you're a good example. You're not 83, you're really just 82?
82.
Okay, 82. Still, it's still impressive. He still got carded to get the discount, the senior discount. And this is a great top 10 list. If any of us can get, 8 of them in, that would be fabulous. You're a good example.
Thank you.
Thanks. Happy Wellness Wednesday.